I wanted to take a couple seconds to go over sketches. I know some of you probably claim that you can't draw very well, so I'm going to teach you some really nice techniques about how to manage sketches and actually trace them. So I have a few printouts of different things that I'm going to symbolize, to draw symbols from. It's a really good idea if you feel like you can't draw to print out photographic prints of objects. In this case, if you watch the other video, I've got the rock, a wave, and I know you haven't seen this, but I've got this nice vase or urn that I'm going to work on. So I want to draw your attention now to my drawing surface. Okay, so I'm going to move the camera. Hopefully you can see that okay. Now, for those of you who cannot, you claim you cannot draw, here's a really great tip. Grab a Sharpie, one that's new, and one that bleeds, and make sure that you have protected your surface of your desk, because this can bleed. So we want this to bleed through. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to kind of analyze the things that I want to keep in the drawing, and then leave out maybe some things that I don't want to keep. Okay, so I basically am going to use the Sharpie to go along some of the contours of this wave, and I'm only going to keep what I think is necessary. I'm not going to get super detailed on this, and the reason why is because this is supposed to be a symbol, a pictographic symbol, and pictographs are simple visuals typically. They're not super complicated. So when we're drawing symbols, it's about simplifying. Now, you're probably wondering, when will you ever need this type of project? And I would imagine that most of you at some point may have to design a logo or some other type of pictographic iconography. So this particular project will hopefully help you understand some basics of just drawing or narrowing down visual elements and then creating pictographs out of them. Now, I'm going to use my artistic license, and here this wave is breaking, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and curve this down. Now, what's going to happen, assuming my Sharpie is new and it bleeds, what's going to happen here is when I turn this over, you'll see basically a pictographic version of a wave. Now, what I usually will do is, once this is turned over, I will darken in the lines that I created and make them a little bit more prominent. So this takes just a few minutes here. Now, in regards to, again, pictographs and this project, kind of the name of the game is to narrow it down to as few marks as possible. And this is quite a few marks, as far as if we're trying to relate this to what the Phoenicians did whenever they worked on characters, or their 21 letter alphabet. They simplified forms, whether it was an oxen or a house. Things were just simplified. So here's a wave. This is just one way to draw it. Now, what I'm going to do in regards to drawing it 5 different ways, I would probably grab 5 different images of the wave. Now, for purposes of sharing your sketches with others in class. We're using tracing paper. I have several sheets of tracing paper I've cut off of my tracing paper roll. And what you want to do is, usually I will draw 5 or 6 squares. Now keep in mind that format is a very critical part of design. If you are not drawing squares and you're drawing rectangles and then drawing the symbols inside of rectangle format, you'll notice that when you finally do go down to the square format that the compositions will kind of start falling apart because you designed for a rectangular space, not a square space. Okay, I'm doing 6 boxes just because the page can handle 6, but you only have to do 5 sketches. Now, in regards to your sketches, what I would do is I would label this what it is, wave, picto, and then I would number these. Now you can wait later and number these. So I have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I might even have a 6th wave. Now what this will do is when we're communicating with each other, we can talk to, we can speak to the effectiveness of any particular sketch because we can say, hey, the wave pictograph number 5 to me is the best sketch, and the reason why is, you know, and then you give the reason. So you want to be able to identify your sketches or each other's sketches really easily, and if you don't number them and they're not organized, that makes it much more difficult. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to study the image that I created of this wave, and it's a little too big to trace in the square. Now these are called thumbnail sketches, and I might start with pencil if I'm a little unsure of myself, and then go back in with marker. So I'm going to draw, simply I'm going to draw this wave, and I'm going to try to use fewer marks than what I had before. And nice thing about pencil is that it erases. Nothing's permanent here. Now I see the opportunity to kind of use this line here to create a visual path. So I might go ahead and do that. I might go ahead and bring that up and then put a few more lines in, and then I'm going to erase that and create kind of a implied line. Implied line means that the line begins but it doesn't finish, and it is implied, you know, your eye automatically kind of fills it in. And the art of implied line is an important feature when you're talking about drawing symbols or even logos. So implied line creates a little bit more visual interest than, say, if I were to just draw this shape. Okay, so this is, I think, as far as I'm going to go with this. So you can see that this symbol that I've just sketched is based loosely off of this symbol that I originally traced. And what I'm keeping is I'm keeping this stroke, I'm pulling this stroke, creating some implied line, I'm making one stroke here, and then I'm getting the peak of the wave, and then I went ahead and added that little guy. Okay? Now, what I'll do now is I'll go over this with Sharpie. Okay? Now, I'm going to use a little bit bigger Sharpie. I just prefer a more substantial line. Now I'm going to carefully go over each of these. And it might get a little thicker, and thick is okay as long as it looks good. You know, they say, you know, you break the rules just as long as everything works. But this is, I'm also working on maybe a little bit of variation in line. Okay, so you'll see that I'm going from thin to thick and then back to thin again. And so here is the first sketch of what I consider a wave.